Go.
Good morning, everyone. In advance, thank you for your time and coming today. Throughout the semester, our group researched various ways that gender inequalities exist in our career fields in each of our various disciplines. Some things that we found across the board are gender pay gap, gendered careers, and how society's gender norms affect the careers that men and women pursue. Today, each one of us will go into our various disciplines and discuss the specific ways that gender discrimination and gender equalities exist in those various disciplines. Now, for my personal discipline, the performing arts, the gender inequalities that exist in the field of performing arts are improving and the awareness is coming out, but there's still a long ways that needs to go. Now, when I first started my research, I started at a broader sense and found an article by Hillary M. Litz called "The Gender Pay Gap, Challenging the Rationalization, Perceived Equity, Discrimination, and the Limits of Human Capital Models." Some things that Litz discussed in her article have to do with the broader cultural and psychological level of how these gender norms and stereotypes are embedded into our culture and how that ends up affecting our various media and the careers that we choose. And I liked this article as a broad sense to start because it helped us with our research and getting off to the right start. The next article that I looked at by Irene E. DePater had to do with age, gender, compensation, a study of Hollywood's movie stars. So it was still broad but moved into my more specific discipline. And it talked about beauty and age and how that affects the stars that we see, men versus women, and talked about how there's harsher criticism on women once they age. The next thing that I moved on to was Gina Davis's research, which is the picture that you see here. And some of these, if we could scroll a little bit, that would be great, right there. It talks about how women are underrepresented in film, whether it's on and off screen, so women directors, and it talks about the certain ways that women are represented if they are on screen. And I really liked this article because it didn't just talk about film, but it talked about how this perpetuates the gender norms and stereotypes. Because if girls see the way that they're portrayed on screen, they'll start to just believe that on a psychological level. It also touched on, if we could scroll down a little bit, right there. It talked about other professions, so I liked it because it had that interdisciplinary spin. And it shows here different, if you could scroll just a little bit more, thank you. Right here it shows the different percentages of how women are underrepresented in these various disciplines. So I liked it because it had that interdisciplinary spin to it as well. The importance of the research that this group does, Gina Davis and her research institute, is that it brings awareness to the topic. So that's something that is happening in my personal discipline that's causing awareness for it, so it's getting better. If we could move down to the video next. Thank you. Another way that awareness for gender inequality when it comes to the pay gap is through stars are beginning to speak out. And if you could go to 2 minutes. So when Jennifer Lawrence's emails were leaked, finding out that her co-stars who were males were getting paid more than she was, she decided to speak out on the subject.
In the back. All the way back. I tried. When hacked emails about her movie American Hustle revealed that she was paid less than her male co-stars, she wrote about it. But saying if she were honest with herself, it was partly because she had fallen into a trap women face, not wanting to be difficult or spoiled, while men don't care.
My question to myself was, why am I not asking for it? And I know that I've always kind of carried a habit of submissiveness with the idea of that makes me more likable.
Some of her co-stars have spoken out for her and for other women in the workplace everywhere.
I felt like I had to say something because we need to talk about it. On average, women are paid 21% less than men. We can ask for the same exact thing as that men do. And we do face the reality that we do get judged more. It's just something that is intrinsic, and I would love to see change.
We are now heading downtown in New York City.
So Jennifer Lawrence, obviously someone who's in the spotlight, someone that people look to, is starting to speak out about it and talk about how, if you noticed when in the video, she talked about how this was ingrained in her. This wasn't just something that, you know, she always felt that she had to act a certain way, and that affects the career of the performing arts. Moving on to someone also in the spotlight, I know a lot of you probably know Reese Witherspoon. She is not just speaking out about it, she's doing something about the inequalities that exist in the performing arts. She's taking action, and she started her own producing company called Pacific Standard that focuses on giving women opportunities on and off screen, so giving them job opportunities, and her producing company focuses on giving women roles, but roles that are dynamic and not just putting them in a secondary position. So she is inspiring in that she is taking the steps, not just speaking out, but she's taking action against the discrimination and gender inequalities that exist in the performing arts. And that concludes my section. Moving on to the management idea of gender discrimination.
Okay, I'm Cody Schaefer, and I'm going to be talking about the management side of gender inequality, more into the business world, and just how women have been mistreated in the business world. As you can see, this first picture is a picture of the glass ceiling. And what the glass ceiling is it's a virtual ceiling, obviously invisible and not a real thing, of where women cannot reach a certain level. They can only make it so far up in a company, and then they hit this glass ceiling where, as you can see, this woman can't go any higher, and that's the best way to explain it, is that they cannot go any higher in a company. So, for example, a woman gets a manager job at a corporation, and she works there for 3 months, and she gets a promotion to, now she's a supervisor. She supervises the store, and she does that for a few years. She does an awesome job, and she's promoted to maybe she's the manager of the whole store now, and this is her store, and she runs the store and does all of its functions, and then it stops. She works there for 4 or 5 years, and she's no longer getting the promotions that she was every 2 years or 2 or 3 years earlier in the company. And what this is she's reached her maximum position in the company. No longer will she be able to move any higher because the upper level management and the CEOs of the company aren't allowing her to. She can only be this spot that they give her because they don't want her. They don't think that women can handle these upper level jobs and the responsibilities that comes with it. So it's a huge issue in the business world. Women aren't getting paid the same for doing the same jobs. Women can only get so far up in the company. The top 2 male CEOs in the Fortune 500 make $210 million together combined, and the top 10 women, all 10 of them combined, only make $204 million. So the top 2 men make more than the top 10 women CEOs in all of in their salaries, just 2 men, which shows you that wage gap, how men make so much more, that 2 men can make as much as 10 women, and they do the exact same job. I understand that the companies might be a little bigger and maybe the responsibilities are different, but for the most part, they're doing the same exact job, but men are making so much more. And it's just kind of how do we fix something like this when they're doing the same type of work? And in an article on Forbes.com called "The Percentage of Female CEOs Drops to 4%," you can see these are the 20 or 21 women CEOs in Fortune 500 companies. So out of all 500 companies, there's 21 female CEOs, which is kind of a staggering percentage when you think about it, which is that 4%. There's 4% of women that are CEOs in Fortune 500 companies. Why are there only 21? And as you can see, there's 1 in the top 10 and 2 in the top 30. So these women aren't getting the chances that men are to run upper companies like this, some of the bigger companies in the world, which is a major issue in the business world. After doing a little research, I found some possible ways to fix the issue, possibly to eliminate the glass ceiling or just kind of limit it a little bit as a manager looking forward into my future profession. One way was to implement pay transparency. And what pay transparency is everyone can see the wages. Everyone knows what everyone's making. So I would get hired at a place, and they have a place that would have pay transparency, it would look like I would know what my female coworkers are making, as well as what the manager's making, what sales and what accounting's making. So just so I kind of know my worth of the company. And so it kind of gives fair treatment to everyone's male and female to see what everyone's making. Another one is eliminate negotiations for pay. So when male and females sit down for job interviews, they tend to ask for more pay at the end of an interview. And a study has found that 7% of women negotiated for pay in interviews right after college, and 57% of men negotiated for higher pay coming right out of college. So from these statistics, you can see that the women are a little more scared to negotiate, either scared or don't feel comfortable negotiating, or feel as if they aren't going to get a job because they're a woman and because they asked for more money. So I think the main way to cut down the glass ceiling would be using the pay transparency. For example, there's already a company called Sumall, which is an accountant company in New York, and they have already implemented this pay transparency. When they are hired online, they are automatically accepted into this database where they can see, where there's a spreadsheet of every single person in the company and how much they make. So there are some advances in the right direction and examples of how you can see companies working in the right direction to eliminate the glass ceiling.
Moving on to the education aspect of our research. So the field of education experiences many gender imbalances also. Traditionally and throughout history, this field was more so dominated by women, but in recent years there has been a decline in the amount of male educators in early and middle education. And this isn't just in the US, it's also a worldwide thing. In this visual that we can see here, pulled from busyteacher.com, we can see some of these statistics. In the US, only 25% of our teachers are men, and that's only 1/4 of all our teachers. In this field currently, not so much in the north, but more so in the south and the west coast, there is a high demand for this career. So there is a higher rate of job acquisition after their undergrad and after they receive their degree. It's worse in Canada, where they only have 70% of male teachers, of all their teachers. And in the UK, of the registered teachers, only 25% are male, as just similar to the US. In another chart I pulled from blackmenteaching.com, there's a more comparable statistical number through this chart and graphic I have here. Of the educator degree holders surveyed, 23% of them were black males, and 27% were white males, while 41% of them were black females and 42% white females. So despite these numbers of, small numbers of male educators, there are many benefits to having a male educator in a classroom. Studies have shown that students give more of an effort to please a male educator, and there's also been shown an increase of self-esteem among students that are paired with a male educator. And students also noted in this study that they tend to feel like they're treated more fairly with a male educator versus a female one. And parents have also noted that male teachers are good role models for students that do not have a father figure or a male role model at home. As a future educator myself in this field, something I was taught to consider and that all educators need to consider is that every student's home life is different. And this can depend on their socioeconomic status. So whether or not their parents are home after school, they might work. We need to consider what resources they have at home and what their home life is. I have a student now that has a really bad home life, and that he requires more of a influence at school from his educators. And having a male role model is very important. Albert Bandura, a theorist, through his observational learning theory, states that behavior can be learned through the observation of others. So by having this positive male role model, we can promote a more positive morale and ideals for our male students and for all students. So since we have all these benefits, why are these numbers decreasing? For one, being an educator is not seen as a prestigious position for a male. This goes along with the notion of man up. And men under more traditional views are expected to have a career that is more physically labor intensive, or such as a police officer or a firefighter, or one that has a more prestigious reputation to further their family, such as a lawyer or a judge, which a police officer and a firefighter could also be a positive reputation, but it just all depends. Jobs such as one in the education field also don't have the highest salaries, and this goes along with the traditional notion of men being the breadwinners and collecting the majority of the income to support their families. But the worst stigma that male educators receive is accusations of abuse, whether physical or sexual. These stem from the notion of men, that men cannot be nurturing. Men that are more nurturing in this field are seen as homosexual or perverted and are henceforth labeled. It actually reminds me of a scenario that I personally went through in my education. In a class I was in, we were working with students at critical reading levels, and for context, critical reading level refers to when the student is very below their literacy and fluency level, so they're reading. In this case, it was a 4th grade class, and some of them were reading at like 1st and 2nd grade reading levels. Before we started working with the students themselves, my professor warned us to use the faculty restroom only because she feared that we would receive accusations of abusing the child or sexual abuse, like I mentioned earlier. And it's a very scary thought to think about that something I put so much work into, receiving my degree so I can help children, something I'm really passionate about as a male, could all be taken away just purely because of a preconceived notion of what a nurturing male is like and what stigmas it can lead to. So how can we combat these stigmas? One way would be to incorporate positive image of males. This can be done by simply having even just images in the classroom, like a poster of men engaging in nurturing activities, to show your students that men can do the things that a female teacher can do also. Another problem is that the field needs to advocate and increase men working in the field. So this can be done by, for one, by having males that are currently in the field promoting and basically advertising how worthwhile and how fulfilling this career is to a person that really wants to work with children regardless of your gender. And you don't even have to be an educator to get involved in the field. You can pull people in from the community, such as the Boy Scouts or some kind of men's club like that, to show a positive image of males' roles, or even getting their male family members involved in classroom activities if possible, depending on the student's home life. And another way is to allow shared roles and responsibilities throughout the school environment itself, assigning tasks based on criteria other than gender. An example of this could be encouraging males to clean up after snack time and then have the females supervise the sports activities and things like that. So by doing activities like these and putting our energy into promoting the roles of males in education, we can combat the stigmas that male educators go through in their careers. And before I move on, I just want to point out that I have my sources here that I pulled all my images and graphics from, and I also used an article by Mary Jane Eisenhower and David Pratt called Capturing the Image of a Male Preschool Teacher, where I also pulled a lot of my information from.
All right, my name is Jefferson Lee, and in my discipline, which is sport business, I took the approach of seeing the gender equality in sports, how women have been affected throughout history of sports, and kind of where we're going today in sports. So, in an article that I looked at by Joshua Senni, it was the examination of female participation in sports. In his examination and research study, he focused a lot on Title IX. And what Title IX is in 1972, it was drafted up that it was a equality document and law stating that men and women would have equal opportunities inside. It's actually inside of the classroom and education at first, but it spun off also with sports. And what this was supposed to do, it was supposed to give, like I said, gender equality, but also give women an equal opportunity with men to break into that sports realm. But after doing some research and study of what actually Title IX is, and actually talked in one of our classes, in our intercollegiate class, Title IX has actually hurt women in sports more than it has helped. Because when they opened this, it said that men were able to coach women's sports, and women were able to coach men's sports. So with that, what this has done, now we can see a rise in men coaching women's basketball, women's soccer, women's lacrosse, whatever it may be, but we don't see the reach out of women coaching men's basketball, coaching baseball, coaching men's soccer, whatever it is. So what I've found is that this Title IX may need some adjustments the further we go, because I feel like it's lacking in some of the areas that it was supposed to help. If you can scroll down, Ricky. So throughout history, it was found that women face a lot of stereotypes. And this goes back to the 1940s, when, as doing research, I found that when the world wars were going on and the men were sent to war, they actually came up with a all-female baseball league. And that lasted from 1943 to 1954. With this, the women faced a lot of stereotypes. They faced a lot of inequality. And in an article I actually read that was written by Jack Bennett back in 1946, as a man from New York, New York, Jack Bennett, who was a writer, explained how women's place was in the kitchen. It was their God-given right to be in the kitchen. It was the men's job to go out and work and entertain people, while the women take care of the men, so they have the ability to do this. So with this, it's found that, I don't know how we've gotten to where we are from that. And it is incredible that, you know, women have come so far. But as you see in this picture up here, a lot of times people say that women aren't physical enough. One thing is, we found that in a study showing that men are more inclined to watch men's basketball than women's basketball because they're not physical enough. Well, I don't know about you, but these women could, you know, beat me in physicality any day. So, moving on with that, when I was putting my presentation together, one thing I found was they're trying to sexualize women in sports, honestly. When I typed in, all I had to do was type in Google, because I was trying to find images for my presentation, women in sports. And this was the first picture that came up. It was a Sports Illustrated. As you see Brett Favre here on the left, or the right, excuse me, you see him in his uniform. He's you know, you can obviously tell who he is. The young lady on your right, she's dressed out. She's in a bathing suit. She's in a bikini. What, you know, we see women today sexualized in sports. You also see articles, you know, 25 hottest female athletes. You know, everything like that. So why can we not just take the women and let them be seen for what they're known for their athletic ability? If you want to go on down. So looking forward to where we are today and where we're going, one of the other articles I looked at was taking a closer look at the pay gap in sports, written by John Walters. Surprising number that stuck out to me in his article was that through high school and college, only 15% of women hold athletic director positions. This needs to change. I feel like with this, we're holding women back. And so, women have broke through that barrier in sports. But now, as kind of Cody talked about in his management, they've hit a glass ceiling. Yes, we're in sports. We let you in sports. Congratulations. Now, be quiet about it and just play your sport. But it shouldn't stop there. With my, you know, in conclusion to what I found, and I'm not going to sugarcoat it, women don't have a great outlook when it comes to sports. And something needs to change. We need a social movement. And I'm sure all of you all have heard about the USA women's soccer team here recently trying to break that pay gap, gender inequality. And I feel like this may be that social movement that we need for the women to break that glass ceiling, to move up in sports, to get that gender equality. But until we break that glass ceiling and until we have a social movement, I don't see anything changing anytime soon. So with that, we'll finish up in biology.
Hi, my name is Madison Richards, and my concentration in gender discrimination was looked at through the perspective of biology. I chose to explore the unwarranted tradition of labeling gender roles across generation to generation, derived both culturally and developmentally. This led to investigating and understanding how gender discrimination is implemented throughout the scientific labor field. These stereotypes cannot occur automatically. These stigmas were founded within society at the first site of civilization, when male figures believed things like women having softer brains than men. So this made them incapable of kind of sustaining a respectable intelligence level. And that's kind of what the link to my video, the debate, Sexism in Science, was an interview from Sky News, and it just kind of elaborated on that idea, but due to time constraints, I'm not going to show that video. Women have since made extensive strides in building a reputation in science. Today, half of all medical degrees and 52% of all PhDs in life sciences are awarded to women. Whereas in 1970, only a mere 13% of PhDs were awarded to women, found in a study administered by Secchi and Williams. However, while the recent number of women in science fields is growing, men continue to outnumber women, especially at the upper levels of these professions. Developmentally, children can be influenced by families, cultural groups, and social media by creating norms for expected and accepted behavior. Transitioning from generation to generation in children as young as 1.5 to 3 years of age. This idea of permanence could propose additional reasoning to support the gender inequality obstacle thriving in today's society. Culturally, this dates back to the early 20th century when women were thought to predominantly be confined to the home, with few actively participating in the labor force. This widely viewed idea that there were men-specific jobs has seen to have had lasting effects on employment for women. Men are viewed as superior in knowledge, especially in the scientific academia. So now to get into the effects of gender inequity in science, it's still deeply ingrained throughout the spectrum of advanced education and employment in the field of science for women. Firstly, females are discouraged by pursuing science or mathematics at a young age. Corbett and her colleagues found evidence of this occurring in education as early as middle school and steadily increasing at the graduate level and yet again in the conversion to the workplace. Secondly, discrimination extends to credibility in grant and manuscript reviewing, interviewing, hiring, and funding. Such claims of discrimination against women are consistent with claims of glass ceilings, reduction of authorship credit and pay for comparable work, smaller lab space, and fewer research resources as found by Secchi and Williams also. Thirdly, in work-life balance, women are found to pursue alternate careers or leave science because they cannot maintain the academic and family balance requirements. Among women and men with families, women are more likely to report that they are the primary caregiver or have a partner who works full-time. This causes implications because due to a female's unique anatomy, essential for reproductive ability, the Pregnancy Discrimination Act, or the PDA, only requires reasonable accommodations for persons experiencing pregnancy-related conditions. The PDA fails to take into account that lactation is a natural physiological response for women, such as breastfeeding.